She thought love could overcome anything: race, class, even her inability to have children. But when her millionaire mother-in-law learned she couldn't get pregnant, the unthinkable happened. A demand so cruel, it would shatter their marriage and expose the prejudice lurking beneath. The family's polished image. Was this really about infertility? Or something far more ugly? This is the story the world wasn't supposed to hear. Naomi had never expected to marry into wealth. Raised in a modest neighborhood, she had worked her way through college on scholarships and late-night shifts. That's where she met Daniel, quiet, humble, and nothing like the arrogant rich boys she'd imagined. He was the son of a successful real estate magnate, but he never flaunted it. Their connection was instant, rooted in shared values and a mutual respect that went deeper than appearances. When they married, Naomi believed love had conquered every obstacle. She'd heard whispers about Daniel's mother, Victoria, how she was old money, fiercely protective of the family's image, and not shy about her opinions. Naomi brushed it off, trusting that time and kindness would bridge the gap. But months into their marriage, a shadow crept into their home. Naomi and Daniel had been trying for a baby, yet every test came back negative. At first, it was just quiet disappointment between them, but Naomi began noticing the cold stares at family dinners, the probing questions disguised as concern. One evening, Victoria invited Naomi over for tea. The air in the room was as sharp as her mother-in-law's diamond rings. The conversation started politely, until it didn't. That day would mark the beginning of a cruel ultimatum, one Naomi never saw coming. The teacup clinked lightly as Victoria set it down, her eyes narrowing with a measured precision that felt more like a cross-examination than a conversation. "Naomi," she began slowly, "I think it's time we address certain realities." Naomi sat straighter, unsure where this was going. "Daniel tells me you've been trying for some time now. I'm concerned. You see, in our family, legacy is everything. We don't just build wealth, we pass it down. Without heirs, well, it would be a tragedy." Her voice was calm, but every word landed like a blade. Naomi tried to explain that they were seeing doctors, that there was still hope, but Victoria waved it off as though she were dismissing a trivial inconvenience. "You must understand, Naomi, Daniel has a duty to this family, to our name, and if you cannot give him children—" She paused, letting the silence stretch. "Perhaps you should step aside for someone who can." Naomi's hands trembled beneath the table. This wasn't concern. This was an eviction notice from her own marriage. But what stung most wasn't the talk of heirs. It was the unspoken truth that lingered behind her words. Naomi had seen the way Victoria looked at her since the first day they met, measured, skeptical, as though her very presence was a stain on the family portrait. The next few weeks were a silent war. Daniel tried to shield Naomi from his mother's remarks, but the pressure was relentless. Family friends would accidentally bring up adoption, or suggest Daniel still had time to start over. Naomi could feel her worth being reduced to a single biological function, as if her education, kindness, and loyalty meant nothing. Then came the dinner party. Surrounded by polished silverware and crystal glasses, Victoria made her move in front of an audience. She leaned over to Daniel, her voice just loud enough for Naomi to hear. "You owe this family a future. If she can't give it to you, you know what you must do." The words hit Naomi like a physical blow. That night she locked herself in the bathroom, staring at her reflection. Was this marriage worth fighting for if it meant enduring such cruelty? Or was Victoria right? Would love eventually crumble under the weight of her disapproval? Naomi didn't know the answer yet. But she did know one thing. Victoria's attack wasn't only about children, it was about control. And deep down, Naomi feared it was also about something far uglier, the color of her skin. The breaking point came on a rainy Sunday afternoon. Naomi had been invited, more like summoned, to the Harrington estate for a family meeting. She arrived with Daniel, unsure of what was waiting for her. But the moment she stepped into the drawing room, she knew this wasn't about reconciliation. Victoria sat at the head of the long mahogany table, flanked by Daniel's two older sisters. On the table lay a single manila envelope. "Naomi," Victoria began, her voice carrying the chill of authority, "I've spoken to Daniel, and I believe it's time to be honest. I have already spoken to a divorce attorney. Papers are ready. If you truly care for my son, you will sign them today. This isn't right, he said firmly. But Victoria cut him off. It is what's best for everyone. She cannot give you children. And frankly, her gaze sharpened, her next words slicing through the air like a whip. This family has worked too hard to maintain its image. You think people haven't noticed? A Harrington heir with her. It's already raised eyebrows. The room went silent. Naomi felt the blood drain from her face. There it was, the truth, laid bare without the sugar-coating. This had never been just about infertility. She stood slowly, her voice trembling but steady enough to carry across the room. You're not protecting your family's legacy. You're protecting your prejudice. You don't see me as your son's wife. You see me as a threat to your perfect little picture. Victoria's lips pressed into a thin line. The envelope sat between them like a loaded weapon. Daniel reached for Naomi's hand. We're leaving, he said, his voice shaking with anger, and we're not coming back. As they walked out into the rain, Naomi knew nothing would ever be the same. But in that moment, she also knew the truth was no longer hidden. The weeks that followed were a blur of lawyers, whispered conversations and severed ties. Daniel stood by Naomi, refusing to let his mother dictate their future. But the rift between him and his family was permanent. Invitations stopped coming. Holiday gatherings went on without them. For Victoria, they no longer existed. It hurt, more than Naomi wanted to admit. She had dreamed of a marriage where family meant unity, not battle lines. But she also knew that walking away from that house, from that envelope on the table, had been an act of survival. Naomi and Daniel decided to focus on the life they could build together, one, defined by love, not conditions. They explored adoption not as a compromise, but as a celebration of the fact that family is made from commitment, not bloodlines. In time, they welcomed a baby girl into their home, a child whose laughter filled the spaces once occupied by Victoria's cold silence. Naomi never forgot that day in the drawing room. It was the day she saw the mask of respectability slip, revealing the truth that prejudice can hide behind wealth, etiquette, and even family duty. And maybe that's why she finally shared her story, not to gain sympathy, but to remind others that racism doesn't always scream in the streets. Sometimes it whispers across dinner tables. Sometimes it hides in questions about legacy or image. Her voice, steady and unwavering, became part of a larger chorus demanding change. And as she looked at her daughter one evening, tiny fingers gripping hers, Naomi thought about all the women who had faced what she faced and stayed silent. She hoped her story would give them the courage to speak. Because in the end, silence protects the oppressor. Truth protects the future. First tiende, and eternities. If this story moved you, share it to spread awareness. Comment your thoughts. Do you think love can survive family prejudice? Subscribe for more real-life inspired stories about injustice, resilience, and hope.